Star Trek The Next Generation was a show that everybody I interacted with. A show that I started watching when I was a really little kid. Can you believe it's been 30 years Star Trek The Next Generation first
Star Trek The Next Generation was my life.
I really grew up with this show.
My relationship to how I should conduct myself. It was the escape from reality. Welcome to Next Generation's First Generation, where Patrick Delmore and Sascha Shouties take a look back into their favorite childhood show, Star Trek The Next Generation. This is where we attempt to reconcile how we felt as children watching the show and looking back as old farts now in our late 30s, almost 40s. Guests, social commentary, and good old-fashioned shade-throwing on our favorite and least favorite episodes. Here comes Patrick and Sascha. Oh, I almost forgot. This is a watch-along podcast, so make sure to queue up your favorite DVD or Netflix, and we'll give you the countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to basically watch along with the episode. Hello and welcome to our finale episode of Season 1 of Next Generation's First Generation. I am your host, Sascha Shouties, and with us today we have, of course, our memorable Patrick Delmore. We see him every single episode.
Hey, folks.
And then we have the lovely Gemleen Shouties.
Hello.
And then we have our guest with us, David.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, this is a fun episode. We are watching The Neutral Zone today. And I have to say, for the record, this is probably one of my favorite episodes to go back and watch when I want to think about Star Trek as a kid.
Yes.
I really loved how they plucked some ancient Earthlings and brought them to the 24th century and then introduced them to the politics of the day, which were the Romulans. And this was also the first hint of the Borg, believe it or not, in this episode. So there's a lot of really good comparisons between how we saw this as a kid and how we saw this as an adult. I remember for the first time when I watched this episode as an adult, and I remember what low mileage pit woofies were, and I was like, oh my goodness, how did this make it onto a family show? But as a kid, and I'm just like, huh? What? Okay. Anyway, so I would recommend you queue up your DVD or Netflix. We're watching this on the Netflix high definition today. So what we're going to do, we're going to give you a quick countdown. Jerry, this is a shout out to you. You better queue it up. And here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
First officer's log, stardate 419.
There is the
Whoa.
beautiful,
Fancy
beautiful
ship.
ship.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's a model either. I think that's CGI.
From the very first episode to this
Yeah.
episode, everything has just gotten brighter, it seems like.
Well, we are also watching the enhanced version.
Oh.
By the way, just as sort of, maybe you've talked about this in previous episodes, is it me or it's like, does early TNG have more of an eerie atmosphere to it than
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's Ron Jones's music really brings that to it.
I don't know, something about the camera quality somehow makes it seem a little creepier.
Yeah, there's a bit with how they play with light, which they really didn't figure out in this first season. And this is an episode that, at least in the non-enhanced version, had some terrible lighting choices later on in the episode.
Data's got a little bit of Spock ear going on, almost.
So the idea here is that they've encountered a probe, and they want to check it out before the captain returns to the ship. And we're about to see some very nice scenes. So they did a great job on this probe here.
You
This
kids
is-
don't go probe exploring while I'm out.
I feel like one of our big themes has been quality of leadership with this group and what Riker's role is. And you see in that last scene how he responds to a regular lieutenant like Worf is and a lieutenant commander like Data is. Because Worf makes the suggestion to go to this ship first, and Riker's like, no, I don't need to do that. And Data's like, might be a good idea. All right.
When did Worf get promoted?
To Lieutenant Commander in the film Generation.
Why does he not know how to use a door handle?
Well, because when you're on the ship, it all opens automatically for you, so you probably have
but the door handle's right there.
Yeah, I know, but he's like, oh, it's a ship. It's supposed to open.
What I really like about that scene is that it's like Data probably went through the same thing Worf did, where every door opened for him, and then some kind person at the academy or wherever he was training to become an officer had to show him how to open a door, and smiled and nodded and didn't make Data feel self-conscious.
I didn't even think about that.
So he returns the favor to Worf there.
Oh,
so they've entered this cryogenic lab of some sort.
Yeah.
And they encounter a mummy.
Yep. I loved this as a kid. Just dead bodies everywhere.
Creepy. This would probably be the time where I would go and run and hide as a kid because
this is where Voyager did a nod to this scene right here when they found Amelia Earhart.
Commander, look at this.
It's a white woman.
I found my wife. Let's revive her and we can have a clean-on wedding.
Yeah.
Whoa! Oh, okay, you weren't kidding.
Sasha is mistaken Data's character on Night Court for Brent Spiner's Night Court character for Brent Spiner's Star Trek Next Generation character.
This is a really fast intro here.
Gosh,
this is right here, of course, the neutral zone. It first aired on May 16th, 1988.
Woo-woo!
It is a beautiful May 16th right now. I would imagine. Time travel, folks. Actually, the moment of recording this, it is quite beautiful outside, so I hope your May 16th is treating you well. This episode...
That was on my birthday.
Yep. This episode was directed by James L. Conway, story by Deborah McNittleverite. I'm sure I said that wrong.
That's a new one.
McLntyre. McNillery. Monocly. Teleplay.
If that's you,
right into the show.
Let us know.
So the teleplay was Maurice Hurley. If you remember, he did that Miami Vice episode where the Enterprise broke up the drug deal gone bad episode. Featured music by my favorite guy, Ron Jones.
Cinematography?
Thank you. Cinematography is by Edward Brown. And we get to see Mark Alamino again. He is in this episode. He is our favorite Gul Dukat.
Ooh, is Dexter Clay in this episode?
Dexter Clay is in this episode.
Excellent.
Yes.
That's a big chunk of episode here.
Then we also have Anthony James, Leon Ripley, Grace Harrison, and Peter Mark Richardson. And this episode is full of Easter eggs, by the way.
Oh.
Yep.
Denise Crosby's name is still in the credits.
That is correct.
Right.
Well, that was because...
Even after the goodbye.
Denise Crosby as Madam not appearing in this show anymore.
Yeah, and Will Wheaton is not in this episode. Which
Will
is too
Wheaton
bad.
hasn't been in the last several episodes.
Mm-hmm. Whoa.
By the way, that guy, he's the Stockburger guy. Mm-hmm. The actor who played the lead in the movie Agent for Harm, which was on an episode in season 8 of Mystery Science Theater.
Ah.
He kind of looked like a poor man's James Coburn.
Enterprise, this is the captain. Number 1, I want to get underway as soon as the shuttle is secure. Aye, sir.
There's this one little problem we got going on, Captain.
We have run into an unusual situation, sir. There are people on board.
There are people on board.
Frozen. How many? 3. The vehicle has suffered severe damage.
Now they're about to enter a very interesting conversation that should almost be a Prime Directive conversation. These are frozen people from the past. We should just let them go.
Okay.
They're gone. They're dead. We've divorced ourselves from our history. But they make the choice. Someone makes the command decision to bring those people aboard and reanimate them.
Yeah, I really am surprised that they didn't pull a Prime Directive right there.
Because
then
that's
they wouldn't have an episode. But.
Yeah.
Do the laws of robotics apply to that?
Yeah, that's a good
Data
question.
Data can't leave them there because it is in fact causing harm
Oh.
to humans.
That's a really good question.
So Picard's really serious and divorced from the plot. He just says, hey, we need to go here, and we have to go here fast.
Oh, they cleaned this scene up real good.
Yep.
This looked so bad. There was almost like a rainbow filter over the scene.
Now
it was lit.
here's something very interesting. So Picard is saying that there's a series of star bases and outposts that have been destroyed along the neutral zone.
Oh.
That's the assumption.
Yeah, they don't know what's going on. They're being sent to investigate. Now, Worf said it perfectly there. He said, Romulans. It must be the Romulans. Now, there's a lot at play here. In the original script, they were supposed to introduce the Borg in a 3-part episode, or a 3-episode series, where the Borg were supposed to be an insectoid race, which would have played really nicely with Conspiracy, right? And they were to meet the Borg and team up with the Romulans, have an alliance with them to fight the Borg. But because of the writer's strike, they pushed the Borg encounter all the way into the second season with Q-Who. And on top of that, there were a lot of writing rules around the Romulans. I don't know if you knew this about the show or not, but there's some things that they could not write to. So, for example, let me bring up my show notes here. So basically, Romulans were covered by one of the main writing rules, which stated no stories about warfare with Klingons and Romulans, and no stories with Vulcans. And the idea was so they wouldn't box themselves into these local race conflicts that they wanted to say, this is a big universe, there's a lot of aliens and species out there, why do we just have to focus on this one race? So when we bring these Romulans in, they wanted to make sure that the Romulans were introduced as the villains because the Ferengi just did such a horrible job at being launched as a villain. And I don't know, so let me get off my monologue and ask the panel a question here. Jem, do you remember the Ferengi? Big-eared guys?
Yeah.
And David, do you remember the Ferengi? So my question to the panel here is, could the Ferengi been taken seriously as a villain in this show?
Yeah, if the first episode had been the Damon Bach and his crashed ship episode and not The Last Outpost, which is one of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, so had they set the tone with the bad guy at the very beginning?
I mean, God, Last Outpost, not only one of the worst episodes of Star Trek, because I re-listened to some of the recordings just for trying to come up with stuff to talk about. We had so little to talk about with Last Outpost.
Yeah. Yep. So, So now we have the Romulans, which will be introduced. And they mentioned the Romulans in about 3 other episodes prior, but they never showed them.
Yeah.
Now to kind of get back to the original, what we're watching here now, is they're about to revive these 3 folks from stasis.
They're thawed out.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question before we went into the whole Romulan thing, but I completely forgot it. Oh well.
I mean, what more could have happened to them?
Jerk line there.
Yeah.
But at the time, it seemed the proper thing to do.
Picard is a jerk.
Well, they're alive now. We're gonna have to treat them as
Yeah, what more could have happened? They could have continued to be dead.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But before you wake them
They're
up,
not.
I want to have security here.
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Worf, report to sickbay.
This is a great scene coming up because they don't consider the cultural shock of these people seeing an alien.
Yeah.
The first thing they see is Worf.
Also, remember that, that line where Crusher goes like, people fear dying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could practically hear Gene Roddenberry enjoying the smell of his own farts.
This is a great scene. It happens to Worf a few times.
Where people wake up and
they see
freak
Worf
him out.
and they freak out. Oh, there she is. We had the on-off hypo. Picard is nodding with approval that his job
she
well
was
done.
smiling. Must have been a good rest there.
I feel like Picard's knowledge of history past.
Down she goes.
Past, like, the Shakespearean era and Elizabethan times is very, very broad stroke, unlike Captain Kirk's.
So that right there, welcome to the 24th century. He says that at least 4 other times in the series. Sorry there, Pat. I didn't mean to stomp on you.
How often do people just faint out of shock in real life?
I've never seen it happen. I mean, the reason that it was a trope was because women wore very tight corsets. If something shocked them, they'd take a deep breath and just kind of
not get enough air.
What is? I'm trying to think what the word is. Starts with an A. Fall backwards, just from just suddenly breathing funny. Dang it! What is that word?
Apnea.
What?
Apnea?
No. It's like a term for if you suddenly take in too much oxygen. Oh well.
Huh.
But anyway, what I was going to say about Picard was he understands history.
Asphyxiation?
Yes. He understands history in broad strokes. So here are some humans from the late 20th century. Broad stroke, the late 20th century was reaping the spoils of the Industrial Revolution. Basically, just a continuation of that, particularly the United States of America that, took on countries that were rich in resources. So he's like, yeah, it would be right to have security here. Kirk, interestingly enough, was a real scholar of history. And, believed in ideas like patriotism and things like that, and he could have gotten on the same level with these people.
Very confusing to you, so I'll attempt to explain.
You are now working for GM Goodwrench, and you're going to be changing oil for these semi-trucks. Man, look how they're dressed.
This young blonde lady is the only one that seems to be sufficiently shocked at this whole thing. Everybody else seems completely calm.
Because they voluntarily were cryogenically frozen.
Oh.
Her husband put her in cryo-freeze without her knowing about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we talked right over their backstories.
We sure did.
Apologize.
I made it. What is it?
What is that?
You mean a robot? Actually, there's a
robot?
difference.
Yeah. What's a robot?
Oh, yeah, robot.
And here was the one I saw before with the head. She means more.
Wow. Rude.
Yeah.
That takes a little more explanation. Now listen.
So the 24th century example of a 21st century problem. So in the 21st century, you go, Pat, your friend, the black guy? So in the 24th century, it would be like, hey, Pat, that guy, the guy with a forehead?
Yeah.
So you don't want to call you don't know how to identify the race, so you just start talking about body features.
So I'm just thinking, what if you got cryogenically frozen? This would be the equivalent, and woke up 400 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
What a shock that would be, and what do you think would be weird, and what would you miss about right now that...
I wouldn't believe it was real. I would take me forever to not think it was a prank.
Because I'm just trying to fast forward my brain to 400 years from now and just can't wrap my head around it.
Particularly if you're in this room, which looks like an 80s doctor's office, with like, waiting room in a doctor's office in the 80s is what I meant.
It's really too bad. There's some really good dialogue here, so... You've got the stockbroker worried about his money. You've got the woman who's completely blindsided about it. She thought she was dead. Like, her husband had signed her up for this after she passed. And then
That's
this guy.
A crazy
thing
to think about right there.
Exactly. So, basically, it's a whole new life for her.
It must have been my husband, Donald. If it was new and foolish, he would have popped for it. Well, I'll say this for it. It's the first thing he's ever bought into the work.
Oh! I can see the quality of their relationship.
Actually, the process of cryonics was never more than a fad. and did not continue much beyond the mid-21st century.
So we don't even really do that anymore.
Yeah, well, it saved their lives.
A phone call? Yes, I have provided for myself. I have a substantial portfolio. It's critical that
Well, it's like that,
let the bank know.
really kind of disturbing fact that, like, if you find a person that's, like, recently frozen to death and they thaw out, they will be alive for a couple of seconds again during that thawing.
What?
And we do not know how to keep them alive from past that point, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky.
Huh.
Like, and not like, a drowning victim where, they'll...
Oh, no, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Why was Diana not there? Deanna, why was she not there talking to these people when they were first awakened? Or in that debrief scene there?
I have a
that would be the perfect time to feel some feels.
theory about that.
Alright.
Basically because the country singer is not acting and could not act appropriately.
Like that guy who played the gangster in the holodeck episode when he was really mean to Wesley.
Yeah.
Oh, the Lawrence Tierney?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is great.
I'd
This
like me a thick Kansas City steak and some country fried potatoes and method green.
Okay, so so they are Earthlings. That's what we established at the beginning. I just glossed over that.
And then they switched to this twangity twang music, which I don't think they ever did at any other point on the show.
Yeah, no, it's very rare that the music provides a scene follow-up.
Yeah.
Martini.
Looks like them Duke boys are in a mess of trouble.
See the Enterprise jumping ramps over.
So apparently in the 24th century, martinis taste terrible.
About the best martini I ever had.
Oh.
And he is the only person who likes a replicated alcohol, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Everybody else bitches about how bad it is.
Well, what's funny is that martini was probably chosen by committee when they created the replicator. Like, they had like 19, martinis, and everybody had to walk around and decide what the best one was, because it's only going to be that one martini every time you turn the replicator on.
Yeah.
What do you guys do?
He just said
Those are some big olives.
he just said like, I bet the Braves are still finding ways to lose. Now, they were terrible when this aired, but in the 90s they made the World Series 5 times.
Yep.
Wouldn't it have been even cooler if they said the Cubs?
Wait, Brady's? I thought he was talking about the Brady Bunch.
The Braves.
No, the Braves.
The Braves?
Yeah,
I always thought the Brady's, like the Brady Bunch.
The Atlanta Braves, the baseball team.
Yeah. Oh, God.
What's going to happen to
So,
us? Do we stay here with you?
I like her a lot. She actually goes in the written canon. She actually becomes a counselor with the Temporal Investigations Department.
that's kind of awesome.
And so she counsels people who've been pulled from their time.
That's
Oh, well, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Duty call, hey, I understand. Why don't you come back later on? You and me will find us a couple of low mileage pit woofies and help you.
Oh my god.
Well, you like David Bowie. I can tell by looking. Ziggy Stardust, there's that twangity twang again.
You are what's wrong with America, sir.
Yes.
So this show, when I watched this as a kid, I did not understand, but I was entertained. I'm like,
Riker's like, yeah, I know what that is. I know what that is too.
Pit Woofies throw themselves at me all the time.
oh.
When I hope that in the 21st century people are a lot better than we are now, but I hope they're not this smug about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
To me, the best example of... Because there really are no characters on Star Trek that act like normal people.
Right.
With the major exception of the Deep Space Nine episode where they bring... what's his name? The doctor. Bashir finds those people in the asylum that come on the ship that
That's
are
a good
actually
episode.
like totally normal acting people but seem really eccentric in that universe.
Yeah.
Well, I liked Tom Paris from Voyager. He seemed like a guy. First of all, he was a big fan of the 20th century, but also he seemed like a 20th century type guy, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of, in the same way that, like, Dr. McCoy seemed like a 20th century type guy.
Yeah. Like, I understand, like you said, there's not much to redeem them. I mean, like, that woman was perfectly nice, and the country singer is, like, you know, screwed up but likable enough, and the worst of them was the stockbroker who's, like, kind of an asshole, but not that bad, so, like, really? You were like, I can see now why we almost destroyed ourselves from looking at those three people?
Yeah. But those three people are normal, everyday three people. And like you said, Pat, nobody is normal in Star Trek.
Yeah.
I love this guy. Yeah, when I was a kid, I just loved how these three everyday people just totally were able to monopolize the time of the crew while they're dealing with this crisis.
Yeah, very important conference. Leave me alone.
You and your staff. This is the worst run ship I have ever been on.
Oh, customer
I love
complaints.
this thing about, like, this isn't, you know, when I was on the QE2, it was a lot better service.
Right? Like, where did you go that it was so much
Yes.
better?
The buffet very rarely gave you salmonella.
There is no crab here.
This is where I kind of wish we could see Picard transporting to the hallway.
I'm sorry. Hold, please.
Oh, he's about to get served.
Yes!
Oh.
I'm Captain Picard. Excellent.
I'm the captain.
Now maybe we'll be able to get some things straightened out. We may indeed. Those comm panels are for official ship business. Well, if they're so important, why don't they need an executive key?
And also stop using the copier to copy your ass.
the guys, the country singers in the background, like, well, dang! I'm really getting into it!
Whatever it is seems very important.
You got, like, a prude or an old dowager on here whose door I can slip these under? Her reaction's gonna be hysterical.
Oh my gosh.
Believe me, I'm fully cognizant of where I am in reality. It is simply that I have more to protect than a man in your position could possibly imagine.
Oh.
Yeah, he ain't
He's
having this.
throwing all of the shade.
Upwardly mobile. I must contact my lawyer. Your lawyer has been dead for centuries. Of course I know that. But
The military
is a very important firm. Rest assured.
This is the 24th century. Lawyers do not exist anymore.
That's what all this is about. A lot has changed in the past 3 years.
Oh, here comes the Star Trek's "We're Better Than You" speech.
Accumulation of things. We've eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions. We've grown out of our infancy.
So what I actually really like
Gosh, I sure
about
hope
Deep
so.
Space Nine is that they proved how wrong that was.
Yep.
How to do what?
Basically,
Control your life.
Deep Space Nine made the Federation just look like a first world nation.
Yep.
Really?
There's one thing. I remember
I'm here, aren't I?
in Deep Space Nine, at one point, they made an unintentional argument for capitalism when Quark said that his holosuites don't constantly malfunction because it's bad for business.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, people are selling things all over the station, too. I mean, they had that whole episode about where Jake wanted to get the baseball card for his dad, but since they don't have money in Star Trek, he had to, barter for it.
So, this is a really, really long Act 2, more or less. They're trying to establish all these
I need to see that pretty little.
folks into what to do with them. And honestly, they're handled quite poorly with the resources they have available. Troy should have been there
What's going on?
minute one.
First time I feel.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of feeling surrounding being unfrozen, and nobody is there to manage it.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you said. I do understand.
The captain's left to manage it.
And please stay off the combat.
So, the other two of us didn't answer whether or not the Ferengi would make a good bad guy.
Yeah.
And I would say I don't know enough about the Ferengi
This is great.
to know.
Here we go. Listen to this.
Will you get those people under control? We cannot afford this continuing distraction.
They're feeling too
Slap
much.
them around if you have to.
Go
Okay.
fix the
Yeah,
feelings.
she's putting the cry in cryogenics.
Oh.
Oh.
Now, I really like this scene. As a child watching this, I thought it was super cool how you were in a terrible situation and you could just talk to a professional about your problems and they could help you work through it.
The local shrink.
They got the nacelles on backwards on that Constitution class, by the way.
Oh, she's not familiar with the term shrink? Apparently it's not applicable in the 24th century.
I heard a story once, and I wonder, how well, this would have worked for her. She's there by herself, and somebody's come to her. But the story I heard was somebody that had called a crisis hotline, and so they were contemplating suicide. And what the crisis hotline ended up doing is instead of sending police over there, they sent like 2 friends to her house and threw her a party.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was, they were not people that the woman that was freaking out, knew, but it was like they just showed up and like made popcorn and
And
played
it worked?
music. Yeah.
All right.
Sometimes that's all that you need,
Yeah.
that to feel like you're appreciated and
We
people
didn't
want to
quite-
deal with you.
We didn't
Then-
quite have 10 Forward yet, but how would she have felt to go into 10 Forward and talk to other women that are serving in Starfleet that are away from their families for most of the year,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that are just like, oh, it's nice to have somebody to talk to.
So here's where we're going to first see our first Easter egg. She's going to look up the family history.
We no longer have religious holidays in the 21st
And-
century.
And the names that are going to come up are going to be the first 6 actors who starred in Doctor Who. As well as television character names Mary Richards, Lou Grant, Kermit T. Frog, and Miss Piggy.
Is that right? That's so cool. I didn't know that.
In the remastered version, most of the names were replaced with the names of Next Generation actors, producers, staff from... So the original one, if you're watching this on the DVD, you'll see the old names. If you watch this on the HD version and pause it, you will see all the names of the cast and crew. And now this guy is asking the doctor for some pet pills.
Scuffle along the best way it can. How'd I get hold of that fellow with the strange-looking face?
It was like the last time we had those on the ship, we shamed the people that brought them on and blew them up real good.
That's the one.
I'll let him know you're looking for him.
Much obliged. You just about the prettiest little doctor I ever...
That!
Oh!
Did he just tap her on
He
the
tapped
ass?
He
her
did.
on the ass, yep. I mean, this...
And so this, in this enlightened future,
This is amazing.
it's one of those things where it's like no one would ever dream of doing that, and because no one would ever dream of doing that, she doesn't know how to respond to it.
Yeah.
She'd probably have to look it up in a book, like what would you do if this happened to you?
Oh, I don't know. I think in the 24th century, there's going to be sexual harassment there, too.
Speaking of Easter eggs, people in the show love putting Easter eggs to Buckaroo Banzai because a lot of the people who worked.
I had that model. Sorry,
a lot
Buckaroo
of the
Banzai.
people, a lot of the people who worked on the Trek spin-offs worked on that movie, so they love putting little in jokes.
Nice.
Deep Space Nine had a few Red Dwarf Easter eggs.
No, nothing that fancy. Just some folks and
We've had some Red Dwarf Easter eggs just on this show. I feel like the show we talk about the most that's not Star Trek is Red Dwarf.
Yeah, true.
You do not seem to be having as much difficulty adjusting to your current circumstances as the others. You mean being here on this tub 400 years from where I started? Oh, heck, it's the same dance. It's just a different tune. You think
I like this guy's attitude.
No, but the computer can replicate such.
I think the actor had a recurring role in Deadwood.
Mm-hmm. Now, originally...
Oh, which character was he in Deadwood?
I don't remember.
I'm asleep now.
Oh, now this is funny.
What's its neutral zone? It is a buffer between the Romulan Empire and the Federation. Why does that make me nervous? I do not know. We won't be inviting these Romulans to our party, will we? No. That would not be... appropriate.
I love it because it really educates you a lot about the politics of what's going on.
Yeah.
That's why I love this episode. It just, you indirectly observed all the things that are happening through the eyes of these three folks.
Firsthand what happened to our distant outpost.
We're finally moving into another act. So, one thing that we missed was he had asked that Sonny there had asked Data to replicate a guitar. The original script called for Wesley to be there, and Wesley was going to replicate the guitar, and Sonny was going to ask him, well, you're a teenager, what kind of music do you like to listen to? And Wesley was supposed to flub his way like, well, I don't really listen to music, I don't know what's popular.
Yeah. There's never any new pop culture in the future.
Set the course for the next closest station.
That Ron Jones music is very poignant.
Except that game that makes everybody go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I have spent
Well, and that
my career
one holodeck program that Alexander and Waxana used, that was kind of the fantasy world,
Yeah.
that could have been new pop culture in theory. Checkered-faced man in the
What
bubble.
can we do about it? And besides, these old boys here don't need us telling them where the bear sits. Look here what that young fella made for me.
I feel sorry for this poor
This is an
poor
ugly
woman because
guitar.
she has nothing in common with these two guys at all and has to like constantly hang out with them. Whereas again, there are probably so many other women on that ship that Deanna Troi could introduce her to that could talk to her about their experiences of being away from family.
Swimming in their soup. So why don't you just relax and let them do their job? Well, that may be all right for you. But I am not willing to allow my fate to be decided.
So this guy,
at least
I don't understand because Picard came down and customer serviced him to shut up, and all of a sudden he's angry again.
We are approaching Terra.
Man, Starfleet security sucks.
Condition is identical.
Right?
Everyone and everything is gone.
Captain, I strongly recommend that we go to Red Alert. If the Romulans have improved their cloaking device, and we'd be fools to believe they haven't, we should assume a more defensive posture.
It does mean changing the bulb.
I recommend
Hashtag Red Dwarf.
Their advice and consent. This is not the time for rash actions.
What's really nice, we're about to follow this actor, Mr. Oppenhaus. So the real actor's name is Peter Mark Richmond, and we get to see how the ship operates from more or less kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's almost a lower decks kind of thing.
Apparently they just walk around.
There
like
is Gene Roddenberry's assistant.
They walk around
wearing-
like video game extras.
He's so much.
That woman,
NPCs.
that woman who walked out was Gene's assistant, wearing one of Troy's outfits. By the way, in that scene there, he's 91. By the way,
Gene Roddenberry?
no, this guy right here,
He died in 91.
Peter Richmond.
Roddenberry died in 91.
Yeah.
Right.
Captain Picard is located on the main bridge.
And they sent his ashes to space.
Take me to the main bridge. Captain, my sensors indicate a disturbance. It is large and moving, but I cannot get a positive lock, nor can I get it on the view screen.
shields up.
Aye, sir.
Captain, I recommend we transfer all power to the phasers and arm the photon torpedoes.
Wait. If that is a Romulan ship, that would be their intent.
So this guy was
Similar posture.
in Naked Gun 2.5, by the way.
This is
Huh.
sufficient evidence
Yeah.
that outposts have been destroyed.
And he was in Friday the 13th, in Knight Rider,
They're
Battlestar Galactica,
They'll only be
Which one?
vulnerable for an instant as
the 1980. He was Colonel Biggs.
May be our only chance.
Like the original show?
Galactica
Or...
1980 or Galactica 1980.
1980.
Yeah.
So not
That's a
so
difference.
sorry. 1980 was the failed reboot,
Yeah.
right?
I've lost him.
Tense moments on
And
the
they
bridge.
just assume that people who aren't supposed to be on the bridge won't go to the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like no do not enter
In the
sign on there.
24th century, people...
Well, Worf is still new to his security position, you know. It's only been a few episodes since Yara's died.
It's like on the shift that they don't work. You think like they're like parents with their kids.
Dexter
like,
Clay! There he
hanging out on the
is!
bridge.
They're back.
Yeah.
Like writing stuff on the blue screen, on the view screen. If you could see this, then you know Captain Picard sucks.
So the same guy. This is the first time we see Warbird. I remember being pumped with adrenaline by this.
Oh
scene.
yeah, no.
It's a beautiful ship.
Just evokes so much.
Looks like a turtle.
Yeah.
It was actually designed by the same guy who designed the Enterprise, and they deliberately wanted it to look larger than the Enterprise.
I think they did a good
Is
job
it
with
actually
that.
larger?
Yes. I think that was the plan. I'm sure I'm gonna get sniped on this, but I think it is larger than the original.
Over the hailing frequencies.
Captain, these are Romulans. They are without honor.
Thank you for the shut up Worf moment.
Did an attack on Kitavar when they were supposed to be our allies. They believe humans
It was
are
a sneak attack.
skin.
Lieutenant, control your emotions. Please, open the hailing frequencies.
Look at that, Riker. I mean, now, if you notice, Riker and Worf never really get along on the show.
No.
This is Captain Jean.
Would you say that Worf is now Kling-splaining?
Yes. Oh, Worf's only role is to be outraged by something, and then for Picard to tell him to shut up.
I am Commander Tabor.
Hey, we know that actor.
Commander?
Do we know his name? Do we know his name?
Alamo, Mark Alamo.
Yes.
It was necessary.
Mark a lame-o, you're a lame-o, eh?
Oh,
Bajoran.
you're like Canadian there.
This is the first time and last time we see the black slash
For the right.
there.
Yeah, which they used to have on the original series.
And they had to differentiate between Vulcans. They weren't really sure how to do this, so what they did was they did the unique forehead thing with
Oh, okay.
the prosthetics.
Huh.
Because I was just about to say they look like Vulcans.
And the same guy who designed the Romulans also designed the Klingons for this series.
Huh.
We've been asked such a
Are they wearing shoulder pads?
Yes.
Looks
yeah.
like it.
We do not.
Do you think that we attacked your outpost?
Once
Like
we
a
realized
business suit
the
designed
level
by
of
Dennis
destruction,
Reynolds.
we could not have been you.
This species was designed by Dennis Rodman,
No,
and they look great.
That's a Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference. He tried to make these women's clothes that were essentially like skin-tight plastic bags.
Arrogant flask.
You're out of line, mister.
You're out of line, mister.
That is a correct assessment.
The security guards, the
I probably
security
could've
officers
said it in a
acting
more
is
British
hilarious. Yeah.
Why entire outposts on both
So the next time we see Mark Alamino
To offer a proposal.
is The Wounded as Gollum Morset. So that's a long
So
break.
yeah,
That's
he
in
comes
season
back.
4.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
comes back as a Cardassian this time.
Yeah, first appearance of the Cardassians.
Yeah.
In fact, they designed the whole Cardassian neck after his.
Is more powerful than-
Well, he's a pretty goofy looking guy if you look at him. He's got a long neck.
Little we learned about what has happened here.
Which segues into dun dun dun. Land Before Time.
convenient.
Here's an Easter egg for the listeners. Oh, the fire truck has something to say.
Hey, alright. Fire, fire. Fire.
I feel like it should be an honorary third host by now.
Yeah, sometimes we do introduce the fire truck.
Chip the fire truck. Aw, why's my name gotta be Chip? Shut up, Chip. Aw.
Destroyed expansion.
So, in case you're wondering, Mr. Oppenhaus here, in the books, he goes on to become the Federation ambassador to the Ferengi.
That makes sense.
Is that the country singer?
No, the businessman.
What
Oh.
about the other
The
guy?
country singer got
I
a
was
shuttle.
saying.
They gave him a shuttle immediately upon leaving the ship. It like corkscrewed into the side of the Enterprise and blew up real good.
Wait, are you, is that really what?
No, that'd be funny.
Wait, does it say?
Oh, what happened to him? Oh, well, okay. So we don't really know what happened to Sonny. He and Offenhaus paired up and appeared in an episode of the Eugenics Wars. The Eugenics Wars was a book series.
Yeah.
TNG book series, but No, we don't really hear
I
too much from
I just
Sunny.
think that's what happened. It's like it's like what they did with Scotty, where Scotty took a shuttlecraft, to go be Scotty. This guy, like, they gave it to him, like, taught him how to drive, like, I get it, and then just the second he gets off, just corkscrews right into the thing. It's like, we didn't give him a good shuttlecraft, did we? No, the steering was fine. But
They really broke this scene up. So watching this as a kid, I'm like, so this whole time were they just looking at this laptop while the ship was at red alert and messing with the Romulans?
she's just holding on to her anxiety meter and trying to get her to relax. And then she's like, the alternative is putting her back in the room with Sunny.
Data made a really funny joke about her when they're listing off the occupation. Homemaker. He goes, wow, that sounds like a really difficult job. You like to build a house.
Yeah.
The USS Charleston bound for Earth. They'll deliver you there. Then what will happen to us? There's no trace of my money. My office is gone. What will I do? How will I live? This is the 24th century. Material needs no longer exist. Then what's the challenge?
You need to move to Portland.
The challenge
Yeah.
is to improve yourself, to enrich yourself.
How'd that theme go? The
dream of the
The
90s.
dream of the 90s is alive in Portland.
How appropriate.
Yep.
Since everybody's forgotten everything I ever did, it'll all be brand spanking new.
I love his attitude.
Yep.
Yeah, so watching this episode really gave me a big adrenaline rush as a kid. A lot of exciting things, a lot of fast movement, but looking at it now, it's really thrown together and hackneyed. One of the reasons was this was the last episode before the writer's strike. And there were a lot of rewrites that they wanted to do, but they couldn't. And so when they gave this to Maurice to write to work on the teleplay and to shoot, they literally just had to throw it all together because they weren't allowed to work on the script.
Just it's funny hehearing about a writer's strike other than the one that happened
In
the
2008,
mid-2000s.
2009, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was 0708.
Yeah.
Our mission is to go forward. And it's just begun.
Here's our, we're not sure if we're getting renewed for a second season speech.
Aye, sir. Warp 6.
So it's one of those, let's wrap it up just in case there's nothing else that happens.
Still so much to learn.
So that means in the end of season 2, they must have known they got a season 3 because they ended with a clip show.
Engage.
There we go.
Yep.
Wow.
So we did it. Season 1 of...
That's a wrap?
So we're going to ask the panel a few questions here. I guess.
Well, David never answered the Ferengi question.
Yeah, David. Well,
Sorry, that sort of can be hard to follow the flow of conversation sometimes.
that's all right.
Like, could they have been a... You mean if they hadn't acted so silly, or what?
Yeah. So, like, could the Ferengi have been taken as a serious villain? Because the reason why I asked this is because the Romulans were introduced as the real villain here in the last few episodes. But they wanted to lead with the Ferengi. And so my question to you is, do you think they could have made a good go with the Ferengi?
I don't know, like, what would their thing is that they're greedy? Like...
And they have laser whips.
Yeah. They,
Well,
the problem is that might have had a little too much of an opportunity to be preachy about how we no longer need money, etc., to have these uber capitalists be the villains,
That's a really good point, actually.
I mean, they kind of did that every time they showed up on Next Generation.
Yeah. The weird part is they went the other direction, having the Borg be the, ultimate collectivists as the villains.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I've always thought that Star Trek kind of went libertarian. Like, just let me do my thing, and I'm going to let you do your thing, and we'll carry on. But, we're at the end of this episode. This is the end.
It's like, I think the original idea behind communism was that, eventually they wouldn't need a state anymore, and it would just kind of end up being an anarchy.
Everybody would work to sustain the whole.
It would just... I don't know, okay, I'm not exactly an expert on this, but I think the idea was that, like, state communism was just an intermediate stage to bring the people towards, like, an enlightenment where we wouldn't need any government anymore. It would just be a total anarchy where everyone was, you know...
An altruistic state is what you're looking for.
So I guess Star Trek is in the final stage of communism in theory.
Yeah, they kind of go in a lot of interesting directions with that. So, we're in the wrap-up of Season 1 here. And we're going to talk a little bit in our next episode about some shows that we really loved and some shows we really hated about Season 1. And when I was thinking about this episode, The Neutral Zone, I loved it as a kid. I love it now. I'm not really sure what kind of score I would give it, though, as a quality of an episode. I would almost want to give this maybe only about 4 out of 10 cryogenic tubes.
Nice.
Yeah, just because... Stasis tubes, that's what they're called. 4 out of 10 stasis tubes. Because... the plot was obviously thrown together in a fast way. It was good eye candy for the kids. You saw these funny, goofy characters along with the big villain being introduced. I remember having an adrenaline rush, but watching it now, I see it more of a historical contents. I see a lot of tidbits that you can kind of pull together some interesting facts about the timeline. So, how about you, Patrick? How many stasis tubes do you give this?
Well, I really only give it 3, unfortunately. I mean, yes, there's some mythology building with the disappearing outposts. We do get to see the Romulans for the first time, but not enough Romulans. There was never enough Romulans around to suit me. My biggest memory of this from being a kid was the martini scene.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know why that one really sticks with me, but it does. There's some fun data stuff in it.
Yes.
But you also get kind of a unprofessional Riker when anything goes wrong and Picard is next to him. I feel like he falls into unprofessionalism so fast. Like his whole, you're out of line, mister. It's like, yeah, that's not how you deliver
trying to out Captain Picard.
Yeah. Wow. He would have been fine
Go to your room.
To reprimand that guy, but it's how he did it that
his
Picard
tone.
his Picard had to be like, yes, the message is correct, but the delivery of it is not.
I'm overcorrecting because my boss is standing right there.
Yeah.
How about you, Jem?
I'm going to be a rebel, and I'm going to change the rating system and give it 2.5 out of 10 Pit Woofies.
Pit Woofies!
Because I think that is the most memorable thing that I got out of this entire thing, because for some reason, I couldn't really get the plot line. I couldn't really understand, why they unfroze them. I think that had they gone the whole Prime Directive route as to whether or not it was kosher to unfreeze these people, or had they followed the story of the blonde lady, that would have been more interesting. And I think that the more times that I guest host with you guys, the more that I realize that I really like the episodes where they go into a specific character's backstory. Surprisingly, not Worf's, though.
Yeah.
And this one, they went out into the world again, and they focused more on that, and it was something that I wasn't really interested in, and they started going into the Romulans, which I'm like, I don't know what that is, and you didn't really explain who the Romulans are, at least not from what I saw, and so then I just started to get disinterested, because I'm like, well, how does that move along the plot of the people, rather than the plot of, just the ship and science and all of that stuff.
You actually make up a really good point, is that the A plot and the B plot don't sync up
not at all.
Not
at all.
It could have been 2 completely different episodes.
Exactly.
Except that what's his name? The guy gets on the bridge and explains how the Romulans are negotiating.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And now
Which Troy could have just done.
Is that what opens up season 2? Is this
No.
Romulan conflict?
It is sort of a funny that, the guy from the 21st century, Kenneb's, I guess people's natures are similar enough across species and across time that he can make an observation like that.
Right. It's just funny that he can make that generalization.
More things change, more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Maybe he read The Art of Negotiation. Well, David, how about you? How many Pit Woofie stasis tube thingies do you give it?
I don't know. Probably higher than... I'd give it 6.
6 out of 10?
So not... I don't know. I guess... I don't know. Decent episode, I'd say. Maybe 5 or 6. Anyway,
That's cool.
So, like, yeah, it did seem a little weirdly thrown together. Also, the, I don't know. Should have thought more about like how I would sum this up earlier. I guess I wasn't thinking I'd have...
That's okay.
Okay.
So
I give it, okay, here's my very incomplete thoughts on this. Well, the way they kind of, like, it's kind of weird that Picard would be so mad that they did that. I mean, like, what's they're sort of treating them like he's the disciplinarian dad and there's their kids who are, you know, going, I mean, okay, it's just bringing aboard 3 extra people. It's not really, I don't see how exactly that would, like, affect their mission that much. I mean, the problem is the Federation Starfleet just has really crappy security.
Yeah.
They like...
They would be a huge resource to anybody that is interested in that period of history, too.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a good point.
I mean, I guess they could, like, go back to the probe later, or send a message, say, hey, can you, this other, you know, ship come up and pick them up, or something?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Sascha, is it surprising to you that you only gave it, a 3 out of 10 after saying at the beginning of the episode, this is one of your favorite episodes ever?
I love this episode because it has a lot of nuggets that are just sprinkled around. Like, you have Worf talking about his past. You have them hinting about the Borg. We get to see the Romulans for the first time. We get to see some Data humor with the Country Bumpkin. I mean, it has a lot of fun, individualized components, but I gave it such a low score because it just does not tie together very well. It's a bad episode with a lot of fun pieces. And it's like eating a cupcake that fell apart.
Well, the problem, I don't think you could have the 20th century people. That can only be a B plot. You couldn't have that be the main story.
Yeah.
It's too much of
It feels like it took up more time. I think if you go to how much time each thing took up, that was the A plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like the A plot, because that's not what we're all anticipating. These are all, those scenes, like, they're,
well, we only see...
The dramatic hook in the episode is, like, oh, how will these people adjust to the 21st century? It's, the Romulans are back.
Yeah, but the Romulan scene, when you look at the amount of time dedicated to each thing going on, the Romulans only happened in the very last 10 minutes of this episode. So, remember Writer's Strike? They had to make something work. So I think they tried to do a lot of dialogue of multiple angles of the same scene. Like we saw Troy going over the family tree twice. Okay. They broke that up. They were in that weird little conference room bitching about being stuck in there, not talking to anybody, and they did that twice. Yeah. So they duplicated, I think they took the same scene and shot it just a little differently and then added it in there twice. I think that to pad the episode.
I think the scene with looking up the family history probably, like, that didn't all, like, take place during the whole time with the Romulan confrontation. They were, like, cutting back and forth in time, basically.
Oh, okay.
That was, like, the editing was bad.
Okay.
They're like, it could have happened after the Romulan thing, for all we know. It could have happened any time.
I'm just thinking, as a season ender, that it was really lackluster. There was...
Right?
Should have ended with conspiracy. Or ended, rather, instead of, Picard and Riker being like, it's a magical world, Commander Riker, let's go exploring.
Yeah.
Have, the last line be the Romulans, saying, we're here to tell you that we're back.
See, and that
then, done the...
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, they make up for it in Best of Both Worlds, so let me tell you. Yeah. So, that's it for season 1. We will most likely have a recap episode of Next Generation's First Generation. We'll probably have a barbecue style roundtable conversation of just what we loved about the first season, what we hated about it. And then also we're going to have, I believe, what we're going to call our Shore Leave series. Patrick, could you talk briefly about that?
So Shore Leave is going to be a series of 7 movies from 1988 that had an effect on mine and Sasha's lives. We're going to try and do this as an annual thing in the months when Star Trek is not on the air. This is 88 is probably going to be our biggest chunk of movies since this was the last episode aired in May and it did not come back until November.
Yeah.
So
I think this is the longest break, right, in Next Gen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look to what day of the month do we want to drop those? We should do it consistently.
Oh, I don't know. We'll let you guys figure it out. Anyway, again, we want to thank you, and please make sure to check out some other podcasts such as Mark's Mass. And Pat, do you have any shout-outs you want to give out?
The Star Trek podcasts that I listen to are Star Trek Monthly Mondays on Two True Freaks with Scott Gardner and Chris Honeywell. They have already reviewed this episode. They did it a couple years ago. It's pretty good. So check that show out over on Two True Freaks. The other Star Trek podcast that I absolutely love is called Give Me Those Star Treks, and that is on the Fire and Water Podcast Network, and it is hosted by Siskoid. If you like to listen to my lovely voice, I am on a show called Weekly Heroics, which is hosted by a different Scott and Chris at Two True Freaks. Scott McGregor and Chris Tyler. I joined them and Brian Hughes to talk about Preacher Season 2, and I am also joining them to talk about Legion Season 2. So if you want to listen to that, that's over at Two True Freaks. And yeah, I think that about covers it.
Woohoo! Okay, so until you hear from us next time, have a wonderful day!
Coming November 21st, 2018, Next Generation's First Generation returns to look back 30 years ago to the day with the second season of Star Trek The Next Generation. Patrick and Sascha share their perspectives as children in the 80s in contrast to our older cynical selves. Tropes, social commentary, and shade-throwing is all fair game.
Join Next Generation's First Generation for this watch-along podcast and figure out what the heck is going on as we continue on this 7-year mission. Episodes will be released on the 30th anniversary of the original airing. Find it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Libsyn, and also explore Season 1 and our Shore Leave movie commentaries while you're at it. Again, that's Next Generation's First Generation at iTunes, Libsyn, Spotify, and Google Play. Next Generation's First Generation.
Why am I introducing you guys?
So you're the guest.
So Sascha, what is Star Trek
Hi,
Next
I am the
Generation?
guest.
So Sascha, what is Star Trek?
Seek us out at Next Generation's First Generation at iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. Music credits include Electric Car by Poddington Bear. Music heard in this podcast can be found at freemusicarchive.org. Audio engineering by Sascha Shouties. Chief Meme Maker and episode cover credit goes to Matthew Kirshner. Logo and graphic art design credit goes to David Clawwitter. And special thanks to Patrick Delmore for working with other podcasts to make sure the good word gets out.
Do you have a podcast that you think people should be listening to? Send us your promos and we'll play them on the show. If you'd like to email the show, you can email us at nextgenfirstgenpod@gmail.com. I've been Patrick Delmore.
And this is Sascha Shouties. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day.
Good night.